Lasla. Good afternoon and thank you for joining today's Shichenkar Virtual Seminar Initiative. Our topic today is Wellbeing Mindset. What is the role of mindsets in development and well-being? The seminar is organized by the Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies. As we enter a novel period of collective uncertainty and distress, it is crucial to engage and strengthen ties between research institutes and government actors that shape our policies towards achieving cross-national happiness. CBS is happy to facilitate the exchange and discussion of different views and approaches to achieving the growth mindset. Over the course of last few weeks, we have had a diverse number of eminent speakers from the world, from policy and academia, who shared their knowledge and experiences on training one's mind. For today's session, I'm delighted to welcome and introduce our moderator, Mr. Rinchen Wangdi, Director of the Cross National Happiness Commission. Mr. Rinchen has served in the Ministry of Finance for the past 15 years and later moved to GNHC. His career as a civil servant began in 1994. Mr. Rinchen holds a master's degree in economics of development from the Australian National University and a bachelor's degree in arts from the Sherapsi College. It is a great pleasure for the CBS team and our esteemed audience to welcome such a distinguished civil servant. I look forward to learning from this exchange. The floor is now yours, Lead Director.
Las, thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon and welcome to the Shichenkar Virtual Seminar Series organized by the Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies. This seminar series has engaged various actors and experts to encourage interdisciplinary dialogues on various topics ranging from the artificial intelligence to mental flourishing. Today's topic is even more interesting as it is going to be about the role of mindsets in development and well-being. This exploration of different approaches and methods to achieving development and well-being is critical at a time when the world is challenged with the global pandemic of COVID-19. Taking time to assess our mindsets and well-being is turning out to be more necessary than ever. I would like to thank Dr. Karmura, President, Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies, and also the staff at the CBS for giving me the opportunity to moderate this very important seminar titled Wellbeing Mindset. What is the role of mindsets in development and well-being? Thank you, Dasha. Moving forward, I deem it as an honor and privilege to be introducing our keynote speaker, Mr. Jürgen Nagler, who is an international and development expert. Jürgen offers a new perspective on the key role of mindsets in transformative development and well-being. His insights are built upon a unique blend of 25 years of experience working for the United Nations, private sector, and NGOs. During his course of research, he has interviewed thought leaders around the world and traveled to 50 countries with enriched experiences on universal wisdom from spiritual traditions around the world. Jürgen holds a Bachelor in Business Administration from Germany and Masters in International Development from Australia, and will soon publish his PhD dissertation. We are delighted to host this virtual seminar with Mr. Jürgen. We are positive that this session will explore the scholarly perspective and delve into diverse discussions, contributing value-added information for the consumption of our participants today. We are greatly looking forward to a presentation, and I give the floor to you, Mr. Jürgen, please.
Thank you so very much, Director Rinchen, for the very kind words. I'm really humbled. A very warm welcome to all the participants. It's really fascinating to see so many known and new friends from Bhutan, but also from around the world joining. It's thanks to the CBS team, Dasha Kamura, who had the idea of this webinar. And I'm humbled to follow in the shoes of many outstanding academics and professors who have spoken in this webinar series before. Together, we're going to explore the concept of well-being and mindsets, as we have heard from Director Rinchin, coming more to the forefront by the day. I'm here with you, not as an UN official, but as a student of life, as someone who has worked in development and been a searcher, I would say, for almost 25 years, and who has enjoyed the beautiful 3 last years here in Bhutan. So I came with my interest to research mindsets, and I'm leaving with a topic of well-being mindsets. So big thanks to Bhutan and all the colleagues and friends who have made these 3 years so special. Today is not a normal lecture, I would say. If you allow me, I'll infuse it with interactive elements, which ensures that you will get much more out of this session. So please come with full presence. You will get the benefits by interacting with all of us in the chat box, and also participating in the one or other very short exercise that I've been proposing here. The 60 minutes will go very fast, I'm afraid. 60 minutes is basically an overview of these very interesting 2 topics. One could spend 60 days researching and teaching it, or even longer, and would still be learning. So I invite you to arrive in presence and gather yourself, and let's co-create this webinar in an interactive way. So as part of our check-in, I will tell a little bit more about my person, and it was so well introduced by Director Rinchin, thank you. I would also love to get to know you a little bit. So we will work interactively with a chat box. So please, if you could share your name and your affiliation in the chat box, that will enrich the conversation. And let me ask you one key question as a kind of a check-in question. How do you rate, how do you assess your overall well-being on a scale from 1 to 10? So physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. If you do a quick check of all your persona, if you could please share it in the chat box. Let me do that myself. I'm entering my number here as well. It would be very interesting to see your names, affiliation, and your well-being level today. I have done this quite regularly, in fact, in my UN meetings as a check-in, and staff found it very useful, because it just ensures that we are checking in from a more human level. So please be active in the chat box. Director Rinchin, how is your well-being level on a scale from 1 to 10? And I see some other friends and new participants. If you could please share that, it would be a great start. And be honest, I mean, it only works if you're honest about it. It's not a competition. You will not be called out if it's especially high or low. So I'm seeing the range from 5 to 10 so far. That is a rich range. So after you have shared that, if you could please also enter into the chat box, what is at least one thing which you would like to get out of this webinar? Was it more the mindset side or more the well-being side? Are you interested in the global perspective or in very practical things? I would love to get your inputs here in the chat box as well. That will allow me to attempt to cover everything well in these 40 minutes that we have. Thank you. I'll continue, but please keep it going. Great. So what's the thought-provoking question which we are embarking on to explore? I'm posing the question, are mindsets the missing key to development and well-being? Seems an old statement, but let's see what the research says, and let's also see what other people have said to this topic. Most lately, in March 2021, it was the United Nations Secretary General himself, Antonio Guterres, in his vision statement to the General Assembly, who stated that we cannot solve our biggest problems if we do not come together. It is not only about institutions or processes, it is in the first instance about our mindsets. So the biggest problems, we all have been very stressed by COVID issues, COVID-related impact. You can also think about climate change. So the Secretary General is now suggesting that we have to start with our mindsets. So how we gonna answer this question? How will the journey flow over the next good half an hour? Briefly, I'll share about introduction and motivation. Then the first main part is around mindsets. The word is increasingly used, but in fact, what are they? Why do they matter? And let's make it practical. We'll do a short test, a short quiz to demystify which mindset you are, one is. Then the second main part of the presentation is on well-being. So what is well-being? What are the dimensions? What is a well-being mindset? And how can we nurture well-being practically? And then I'm very much looking forward to the Q&A session moderated by Director Rinchen. So short introduction. Indeed, I already covered some 25 years. Time is running, especially in these times of career in different sectors. And what I've observed is that we can only explain half of the story. If I'm very honest, why does one country, why do certain people develop and others not, despite seemingly they have the same environment, the same external factors. I find the explanations covering maybe half of the story, the other half I find is a gap. So the knowledge gap that I have been researching is that the current approach is insufficient in properly describing our development journey. And I have found that especially the internal factors, the invisible factors, are hardly taken into account, hardly addressed. So especially the role of mindsets, therefore really intrigued me. And that has really kicked off my quest for this research journey. Does it really matter? Let's see what other eminent people have been saying. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that if we want to have a better and a happier future, now is the time to examine the mindset of our present generation. So what we can see here is mindsets seem not only to be important for oneself, but also on issues around sustainability, happiness, including for our children and grandchildren going forward. So when I've unearthed these eminent people highlighting the issue, it was further motivation for my research. So let's demystify mindsets. What does it actually mean? One definition which I found useful is that mindsets reflect the personally distinguishable attitudes, beliefs, and values. So these are all internal factors, attitudes, beliefs, and values, which then influence our ability to learn, lead, achieve, and contribute. So let's be practical. So we're all getting something concrete out of it. Pam will share a link in the chat box. It's also shown here on the screen. If we can all go, please. And I don't want to lose you, so just open a browser window when you click on this. And we will do a short test, a short quiz, which will help you to unearth for yourself if you have a fixed or a growth mindset. So the link is in the chat box. It's only useful if you're honest. It's over a dozen questions, so no need to think too long about it. Go with the first intuition. So let's give ourselves 3 to 5 minutes to complete this short test. And when you have the result, please feel free to share it in the chat box, which will also allow me to see that we are getting this exercise concluded. Best of luck answering these questions, please. We have around 2 more minutes, please. And as I said, the first ones, if you're finished, please feel free to share. No obligation. So maybe 1 more minute, and it's great to see that people are sharing their results. Okay, good. If you can come to conclusion of the test, please. It's great to see that the results are coming in. I would say so far we have by far more people with a growth mindset vis-a-vis a fixed mindset. Not very surprising, because it's probably a selection bias given your interest in this topic. It obviously by itself demonstrates your curiosity and willingness. Great. So what does fixed and growth mindset in fact mean? Professor Carol Dweck wrote a seminal book about this topic called Mindsets. And in most simple terms, here we have an illustration. The fixed mindset sees failure as a limit of abilities. A growth mindset sees failure as an opportunity to grow. Likewise, fixed would probably more avoid being challenged and has an attitude of either I can do it or I can't. It's more black and white thinking, and would also believe that abilities are not easy to change. Either you have the talent or not, and people might be more quicker frustrated and give up with a fixed mindset. In contrast, a growth mindset is more open-minded and has a greater willingness to learn, seeks out feedback not as a critique, but as constructive, and feels inspired to learn new things. So this is a very simple dichotomy of fixed and growth mindset, and there are other research studies who come up with different mindsets on being a benevolent mindset, or I will talk today a little bit about a well-being mindset. So I'm going to share with you now the summary kind of many years of research. I academically started the research in 2017, so that's only 4 years, but personally it has started probably much earlier, probably over 10 years ago. So I see there are also several development and psychological professionals in the team here who can please correct me if I'm saying something off. But this is very interdisciplinary, qualitative research. So far I've interviewed over 40 development thought leaders and practitioners around the world, including many very, very interesting conversations here in Bhutan, which with its cross-national happiness philosophy has been an absolute leader on the topic of well-being and happiness for many decades. So some of you who are familiar with systems thinking might have seen various versions of the iceberg model, which again is also here a very relevant illustration. As we know from an iceberg, only the relatively smaller portion, maybe 10–20%, is visible above the surface. We see the effects and we see the symptoms. What we do not see below the water surface are the root causes, and the root causes are probably 80–90% of our thoughts, of our energies, and they equally manifest reality, but they're not so tangible and visible. So if you translate this to the development sphere, we see poverty, conflict, climate change in the world. We see also external factors which we can measure. We can measure schooling, gender, the performance of institutions, and to some degree also social norms. And that all manifests then in people's behavior. What we do not see is the multitude of internal factors. Foremost, mindsets, attitudes, beliefs. This is typically invisible, and therefore, at least in the development sphere, largely not taken into account. So my passion and ambition, so therefore, has been to populate, call for, and advocate a more holistic development approach, which also takes the internal factors into account. This knowledge gap has also been acknowledged by the United Nations. Thanks to Bhutan, who started a resolution in the year 2011, who was adopted by all member states, calling for a more holistic development approach, which takes internal and external factors into account. So we do see some increasing interest. However, I think there's still a huge gap and much more research and then practical implementation required to make this a reality. So in my research, the core question has been, how do mindsets influence human development? And the sub-questions have been covering the role of internal factors, then also how are mindsets shaped, when, how early, by whom, and then to take a practical direction forward, how can people be empowered and supported in shifting their own mindsets? Long story short, the proposition I am suggesting to you all here is that internal human dimensions, such as mindsets, have root causal influence on human development. We've heard the earlier quote by the Dalai Lama. It has been a great inspiration in the whole field of spirituality for me and for, I'm sure, many of you as well. Also, given that I have a background in business, Professor Yunus, Nobel Peace Laureate, has populated the idea of social business. Nelson Mandela, I had the honor to serve in South Africa for a bit, has been an amazing person in the field of leadership. And here in Bhutan, His Majesty the King, both current king, but also his father, have been spearheading cross-national happiness and climate action, which is one of the best examples that we have in the world. And therefore, I am actually very, very grateful for the opportunity that I also had to exchange with His Majesty the King and so many people in Bhutan who really reconfirm my commitment to advance well-being in GNH. Scientifically, this is based on Professor Amartya Sen, economic Nobel laureate, with the capabilities approach, which is the foundation for much of the development work, including of UNDP, has been a very important figure to move the needle from GDP, gross domestic product, to something wider. Professor Carol Dweck, I mentioned her, wrote this book, seminal work around mindset theory, and on systems thinking, Dr. Otto Scharmer at the MIT with his theory U. So in simple terms, how would I summarize my findings? At least at the individual level, there are different levels, but in most simple terms, we see that mindsets here in orange have a very central role. These mindsets are influenced by our upbringing. That includes parents, educators, our surroundings, culture, and media. Our mindsets then influence our thinking, our feeling, and how we see the world, the perception, which again is a strong determinant factor for our behavior and our actions. Based on our actions and our behaviors, we have certain experiences. And if we are reflecting on these experiences and make new decisions and new attitudes, we have the power to change our own mindset. Sounds all very easy, but as you can see in the top right corner, probably 80–90% of this is unconscious. So it's easily talked about, but there is a constant stream of thoughts happening within all of us. By some estimates, supposedly we're thinking 60,000 thoughts a day, with a majority negative. So most of us would not admit this. but this self-talk is very powerful, and therefore we'll also talk about a few tools that can be used to shine some light on this subconscious. I mentioned there are a couple of spheres. The one we probably predominantly talk today is on individual mindsets. So how are we creating our own life journey and life experience with our mindsets and attitudes and our personal worldviews? There are numerous change makers which can be great inspiration to shine light on this, and I will shortly give one from my personal experience. Secondly, collective mindsets that can be, for instance, at the national level. So this has to do with national issues, national development philosophies. Bhutan is a prime, beautiful example, with GNH being the mantra, the philosophy which has guided policy making and implementation. Another case, very different, would be Rwanda. Rwanda has gone through very difficult times with one of the biggest genocides in recent history, but more lately, also under the new leadership, Rwanda has developed as one of the best fast-growing countries in Africa. And people who have recently visited Rwanda would see that it's an absolute sea change to what the country would have looked like 2 or 3 decades ago. Global mindset, that's also very interesting. Then it's very similar than a global paradigm. The global economic paradigm we're currently in is putting a lot of emphasis on economic growth, on GDP growth. In contrast, something like GNH or the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the UN global goals, would be much broader based. Typically, most of us or the population wouldn't be actually very aware of what the dominant paradigm and mindset is, because we rarely really reflect on these issues. So let me give a practical example. Yusha Traoré is living in Mali in West Africa. I've visited that country a couple of times with my earlier NGO work. The image to the left shows how he has been a very poor street child. It's difficult to imagine here in Bhutan. We don't have such poverty in Bhutan, but some of these children are living without being taken care of their parents, and they're literally begging in the streets. And this plastic basket here is how they collect money and food from bywalkers. So it's an incredibly poverty, really hard for us to imagine in an extremely harsh environment. However, Yushao, who's now a friend, I can say, did not want to be confined to this supposedly fate. He found his way into the schooling system. He was much older than others, but nonetheless, he persisted. He probably demonstrated a very clear growth mindset and excelled in school, became a translator, found jobs, and realized that he wants to give back to community. So he fundraised resources and attracted resources from abroad, and has since then been building several schools. So on the right side, this gentleman in blue, that was my younger myself, with Yusha standing there in front of the national TV, inaugurating a vocational school, which was one of several schools. So here we see the power of someone overcoming their supposedly determined fate. If we bring it to a higher level, if we bring it to the systems level, systems thinking, I would like to recommend the seminal work of Donella Meadows. It's a full graphic, but I will just summarize the main elements. So in systems thinking, there are identified several leverage points. So these are basically methods, or how would you be able to change a system with an intervention. So as we can see at the bottom left, physical events is something which we can observe and which we can also manipulate. We can manipulate infrastructure, materials, certain numbers we can measure. One level higher as a leverage point is informational. These are patterns of behavior where we have certain feedback loops. If a government provides, for instance, certain public services, if you create feedback loops from the citizens, it can be very informative. And if you take the feedback into account, we can change certain things. Higher level is social and system structure. So for a nation, the laws, the policies, the roadmaps are a very high leverage point. Also certain development goals, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, if countries and people really put the energy behind, are a very high leverage point. However, what Donella Meadows found is that mindsets and mental models are in fact the highest leverage point. So imagine a leader of a country would be able to instill a mindset shift in people, would be able to instill a can-do attitude, would be able to get the feeling across of people being empowered to drive their own development. If that's also then backed up with a conducive ecosystem, it can really have a transformational impact. So a couple of more suggestions what is needed for systems change. So at the individual level, it's about not getting stuck in our head, but also engage our hearts. I can probably share here a bit of my personal story as well, because before going on to this NGO and UN career, I was working in the private sector, and I could say I probably had a very fixed mindset. I was pursuing money. I guess probably the pursuit of money was my purpose at that time. So only due to then a catalytic event, in this case, I had a bad motorbike accident in '97 that really shook me to the core and triggered a journey of self-reflection and questioning what I really want to do with my precious lifetime. So that triggered an opening of the heart, an opening of the mind, and that probably, I would say, really shifted or allowed a journey of a very profound mindset shift. I'm not suggesting, if you want to change your mindset, that you have to wait for a catalytic experience, but it's definitely reported as one of the potential catalysts. So there are a couple of items on the individual level which you can take, but we're a little bit short of time, so I will summarize it. At the community level, the approach I'm suggesting is co-creation. So government and development actors should not impose their solutions. Experts should not impose their solutions. It's about creating space, listening to communities, ideally finding their own solutions, and the people who provide assistance really to operate on the same level playing field. And at the systems level, it's about embracing complexity, listening to the wisdom of the system. Multi-stakeholder approaches have the ability to unearth the solutions and the wisdom which are already part of the system. So in summary, these are the 6 key findings of my mindset research so far. So first of all, I'm proposing that sustainable transformation happens from the inside out. Even if there's an external catalyst, the shift in itself happens from within us. Mindsets do matter. They play a very important role at all levels, individual, collective, and global. Thirdly, mindsets can be shifted, especially by increasing awareness, self-reflection, and self-responsibility. You see here that I'm not proposing that we are running around aiming at shifting other people's mindsets. That would be very paternalistic. People have their attitudes for very good reasons. We need to be very humble about it. We can make offerings and suggestions, but it's up to people themselves and their own self-responsibility. Number 4, solutions should be co-created. I've talked about that, and that requires a shift by government and development practitioners themselves. 5th, the current approaches are too materialistic. So we need to shift from GDP and economic development to something broader. And that's here number 6, a more holistic development approach should include inner, collective, and planetary well-being. So let's come to well-being, a whole topic in itself, fascinating topic. Here we see the wheel, so-called wheel of well-being with 8 dimensions. If we start from the bottom left, physical dimension, we all know how important physical health is. Intellectual, that's about our mental health, also sometimes overlooked, equally important. Environmental is only underscored also with the ongoing climate crisis, heat waves around the world. Another dimension is emotional, furthermore financial, furthermore social. Likewise, the importance of spiritual dimension, and last not least, occupational. So all these 8 dimensions are very profound, multiple books written about it, but this is just an overview that well-being is really a multi-dimensional concept. One practical thing I can also recommend is to download the Healthy Minds app from Professor Richard Davidson, who in fact gave a talk in the same forum here not long ago. So I can highly recommend looking at that talk, where he unpacks very beautifully what he calls the 4 constituents of well-being. One is awareness, the other one is connection, thirdly, insight, and number 4, purpose. So if these constituents resonate with you, the video recording is available, and also the app is easily available at the link provided. So let me attempt to then come up with a well-being mindset. What is a well-being mindset? It is the whole of our attitudes, beliefs, and values that a person or a group has, which fosters well-being. Well-being, we've seen, for instance, the 8 dimensions earlier. So well-being relates to a person, a group of people, or the whole of humanity, or also other sentient beings and animals, and planet Earth. So it has multiple circles. Probably it starts with our very own well-being, our inner well-being, and then extends to our people around us, our families, society, humanity, and the planet. So it's a multi-layered concept. So in total, I'm suggesting in my work, both in this research, but probably it's my life work carved out, that we globally need a mindset shift. We need a mindset shift from ego to echo, from GDP to GNH, from materialism to holism, from wrongdoing to well-being. So how this can be achieved, please share them with me, because that is my main purpose. I'm almost coming to an end to my presentation, so I just wanted to end with some very practical tips, which I've personally also tried out myself. And it can be summarized in this acronym mantra. So the M in mantra stands for mindfulness practicing. We all seem to be overworked, very busy, but we are missing the beauty of life if you're not mindful. The A stands for awareness expanding. Likewise, the more aware, the more conscious we are, the more we can integrate issues and heal and transform from our shadow. Thirdly, non-judging. I said a lot of our thoughts are negative. If you're judging other people, we're also judging ourselves. T stands for think positive. So if you can shift a good chunk of our thoughts from negative to positive, that would be great. Be the real you. It's only of limited help if you blend in and try to live other people's lives. So real you, and that will also lead to A for aliveness. I think life is precious. It's beautiful. It's there to be enjoyed, and the more alive and the more true colors we show, the better it is for our own well-being, but also for people around us. So with this, I thank for the time. Thank you for attention. I've seen a lot of traffic in the chat box, which I will read with great interest. And let's open it up for Q&A, please. Director Rinchen, back to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Jürgen. Over the course of your presentation, we had a very good opportunity to listen to your insightful and intellectual point of views, covering componential element of mindset as an integral solution to developmental well-being. And also further, the differential talk on fixed and growth mindset is a very clear indication that we keep ourselves open to challenges and grow optimistically to influence constructive well-being. We have learned that holistic development approach of human primarily depends on the root causal relationship where interactions among the mindset, attitude, thinking, perception, action, behavior, and experience are mandated requirement of healthy livelihood. In addition, the mantra technique as a strategic solution to well-being incorporates living with positivity, practicality, empathy, and self-awareness, enhancing the 4 constituents and 8 dimensions of well-being. In this regard, thank you, Mr. Jürgen, for your generous delivery of this content to our distinguished participants and audience. Now we are delighted to open the floor for a few further exchanges. So we would like to start Q&A, if any, from the participants. Any intervention?
Hello, Director, sir.
Yes. Okay, Director General, please.
Yeah, this is Jorgen Nataler. I'm from TCB. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jürgen, for this very interesting presentation. And especially towards the end, you gave us the mantra for the well-being mindset. So thank you so much. I will keep that in mind. Now, coming to my, hello?
Hello.
You can hear me?
It's audible.
Yes. So now amid COVID-19, in the world of tourism, the destinations world over are actually now moving towards the new kind of a tourism product known as well-being and wellness. And of course, even business-wise, I think it has been predicted that there's a huge potential in terms of $1 trillion business in wellness and well-being tourism. So this is the trend, and in Bhutan, we are also trying to move towards this. But the specific question that I have is, of course, in your presentation, you have been using the word just well-being. But in our tourism, in our literature, in our communication, we also try to use this the same together, wellness, well-being and wellness. So, of course, I have my own understanding of this, but I'd like to request your view on this. I mean, what is the difference between well-being and wellness? Thank you.
Thank you, Dasho. Yeah, terminology can sometimes be a little bit tricky because it can mean different things to people. To me, wellness is largely about probably more the physical wellness. I mean, I think it lends itself very well to Bhutan about having spas, hot stone baths, which I've enjoyed. Maybe where it then becomes broader is meditation and mindfulness opportunities. For me, well-being is very holistic. So I think these 8 dimensions demonstrate how holistic it is. So I think there's a very good overlap, and I agree with you that it has tremendous potential for Bhutan. So I hope it can be seized. Best of luck, Dashu.
Thank you, Jürgen and DG Tourism. I've actually pulled out from the chat room, there are a couple of questions. The first question is from Shan Turnbull. To what degree do you use the OECD statistics on the individual well-being? That's one question. Then other question from the same person. How important is the knowledge gap by public and scholars on how to introduce self-regulating, self-managing, self-governing units to avoid global tragedies? Okay, back to you. Yeah, again, two questions.
Wow. Yeah, I'm aware about the OECD initiative. I think it's really good to see that we are seeing various countries exploring well-being and how to integrate it into policy making. I mean, Bhutan has been ahead of its time since the 70s when you formulated G&H, but only more recently we see OECD in other countries, Finland, Scotland, Iceland, and so on. And there's also approaches on well-being economy. So I think this is much welcome. I'm not too familiar now on the very specific indicators, but overall, I think it's a much welcome development. On the second question, on the link between self-regulation, management, etc., for the, I think it was related to the common goods. I probably would have to take it offline. I mean, it's requiring, it probably deserves a little bit more thinking. I mean, the dilemma of the common goods has been written much about, and if we are not able to manage our own issues, you know, our own ignorance, our own greed, it's going to be difficult. I mean, the state or the governments have certain regulatory powers, but in my research, the importance of self-responsibility really came about. So I do hope that by us doing our growth work, that we are protecting the environment, that we are protecting the common good out of an enlightened self-interest. So that's my hope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jürgen. Again, Miss Anna, I saw she raised her hand. So any question from Anna?
Yes, thank you for a very good presentation. Very interesting, and good to know that we are many who think in a similar way. So I have noticed also in the chat box that I'm not the only one who is interested in staying in contact in some way or the other, because we have similar research questions, and I would guess that some of us also have similar questions in a more activist kind of context, how to implement, how to merge these kind of questions into a society, into a cultural context, so that it doesn't become only a research silo like this. If you can say something about that.
Okay, back to Jürgen on this.
Thank you so much. I mean, it really speaks to my heart. I mean, this research to me it means towards a goal. The most beautiful theories of the research is only as good as it translates into reality. So I would love to stay in touch and join forces with other like-minded change makers. So I've just shared my personal email address. Please be in touch. I would like to believe that there is an increasing number of like-minded people which recognize that we need to do things differently. So I do want us to reach critical mass, so we're getting to the tipping point of this mindset shift. So I encourage everyone who wants to stay in touch or has other suggestions, please to pick up my email address from the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite Merak Yongba for question, if you have raised the hand.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Director.
Yes.
And that's a question to Jürgen. Is it audible, sir?
Yes, yes, yes.
And, I sometimes find the mindset and well-being very much of a Buddhist attribute, or it has more of a Buddhist identity, in fact. And like looking at the research that you have, I would just like to ask, do you have any kind of an intervention with a Buddhist psychology or a Buddhist psychology? Because I see the identification here on the mindset is so much of a Buddhist. This is one. The other one is, I was just trying to look at Carol Dweck, the growth mindset. And then you can see it is just giving us a lot of hope. And in fact, you can just see Buddhists have been living with so much of hope, relating to how we are small. But seeing the COVID situation, the smallness was the beauty of it. And then we were able to address this. So I don't know how do you actually advise, like the smallness has a strength, the smallness has the beauty, and the smallness has the sustainability, and the smallness has the spirituality. So if you can just advise us, I think it is giving a lot of hope to the Buddhists, and then Buddhists are really living the life, just building up on what you have actually said on the growth mindset, in fact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mera Yongba. Very good question. Okay, Jürgen.
Thank you so much. Indeed, I mean, this is why my 3 years have been so beautiful here in Bhutan, because there is a mutual resonance. I mean, it's what His Majesty the King said, GNH is development with values. So I think your history and your culture of Buddhism is a treasure, is an absolute treasure. And it's very similar. I mean, GNH and what I propose as well-being is almost interchangeable. I think the trick, to be honest, lies in actualizing it, in living it on a very daily basis. So GNH is translated from the aspiration into very, very much everyday life. And in on many fronts, this has been the case. I mean, how Bhutan has taken care of its population during the COVID crisis, the success story of the vaccination, the social protection through Kido and so on. At the same time, there are other areas where challenges really remain, be it on some of the unemployment issues, youth issues, addiction, waste. So the work continues. On your point of smallness, I mean, so far with the enlightened leadership that Bhutan has, you have managed very well to be your true you and to be being unique. So that wisdom of finding your niche and uniqueness, I'm 100% sure will continue. The challenge, of course, is not to, I think it's wise not to compete with giants on certain topics where one is not competitive, but be smart, to continue to be very smart about niche areas. You have done so in tourism, where you rate quality higher than quantity. And something similar might also be possible in other areas, be it in agriculture, be it in other areas of using your energy sources. So sometimes small is beautiful, and I'm sure you will continue with wisdom on that journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Since we are running out of time, I'll give 2 last questions. To the first question to be asked by Alexandra, and then followed by Shan Tranbul.
Thank you very much, Jürgen, for the presentation, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this meeting. It's you really spoke to my soul, because I'm one of those who are writing in the chat, let's keep in touch, we are like-minded people. So thank you, Anna, also for bringing this to the audience. Well, I have a lot of questions, but just perhaps the one that that I feel more important right now is that where did you find at a certain point your community in the academia, in the development work, in the NGOs? Where do you find like-minded people rather than in this webinar where it seems like you have a lot? Thank you, Noor.
Thank you.
Wow, great question. And I must say, in the beginning, I felt like the crazy one. I felt quite alone, I must say. But with research, with showing myself in forums like this, or attending other similar webinars, I've always increasingly found other like-minded people. I mean, it's not crazy what we are dreaming about. I mean, it's actually very practical, and it's what the world needs. I mean, that's what the world needs now if you want to get out, if you want to avoid a climate catastrophe. So it's a personal journey about networking. I don't think there's one magic group that I can highlight. But maybe we should start. We can look, maybe after this, we'll start a well-being mindset forum on an internet platform. I'm about to launch a website called Wellbeing Mindset. We're gonna just publish this stuff so it's accessible, but let's do an online group.
Thank you. The last question, we'll give it to Shan Tanbul if you have any question, although you have, I think, even sent it in the chat, which was already answered, but if you have any extra additional question.
Oh, no, thank you. I think the chat records my question. I was involved with the OECD Wellbeing initiatives some years ago, and I've been promoting the idea that we ought to learn from our traditional Australian Aborigines who have been self-governing for 60,000 years from the bottom up, and that's something that I don't know of any university in the world that teaches how to be self-regulating, self-managing and self-governing at community, local, regional, bi-regional and global level. So I see that as a knowledge gap that needs to be complementary to the wellbeing initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Shen. I mean, I almost get goosebumps when you talk about this. I really hear you. In fact, in my research, it was just not possible to present today. As you say, indigenous communities have been living sustainably for thousands of years. So it has been basically the crazy white man with, I don't know, coming up with an idea of unlimited growth on one planet. So in fact, I advocate that any new concepts, I mean, we should marry the timeless wisdom with modern science.
Exactly.
So sharing this.
Thank you, Jürgen. I think we are now almost to the conclusion, but for the sake of your reflection and pondering, I think once you are back to Germany, I would like to keep three questions with you. You need not have to answer today. Mr. Jürgen, the current call of the century demands viewing development from the well-being point of view. However, how do you, as a development expert, comprehend the realization of this transformational change with materialism taking precedence in every aspect of the socioeconomic development? So your view on this. And the next question is, considering the iceberg model mindset, we have always played our priorities and due importance on visible external factors. And it is in this visibility facet that we fail to balance internal factors at par with external factors. Could you please share attributing reasons underlining the imbalances in the iceberg model of mindset and redressal mechanism required to correct this state of being. So the last one, when it comes to 8 dimensions of the well-being, some of the factors are deemed existing in contradiction per se, financials versus emotional, for that matter, occupational versus spirituality. So in this, in view of this, how do we internalize this dimension so that 8 dimensions harmoniously exist to impact healthy systematic mindset? So these are 3, the not only question, but the intervention, the point of view. So you may reflect on that. And now I think we will adjourn the Q&A, and I would like to propose a vote of thanks. Firstly, we are truly grateful to Mr. Yagin for his deeply insightful and profoundly moving presentation on well-being mindsets. We are particularly grateful that he tailored his remarks to our distinctive context, and we hope that our participants feel better equipped to change our mindset. To convert the negative mindset into positive mindset or growth mindset from fixed mindset that will provide practical inspirations and influence on the positive development. We have been illuminated and equally impressed by the scientific reasoning and research-based interventions in chiseling our understanding on the power of our mindsets. We are also, your scholastic and academic inputs are well admired, where your experiential journey bringing to this platform diverse stories from countries across the world has widened our reflection on the coexistential integration of well-being into the mindset for the planetary developments. I would also like to reiterate the importance led by Mr. Yagin and urge our participants, all the distinguished participants and audience here, to practice these healthy techniques in view to positively transform your personal lives, impact societal and national developments, while materializing the global visions for the prosperity and tranquility of the world. We are grateful for your time, for this human and professional connection, to you for our interaction, interchange, and for the wonderful new insights you contributed to this virtual seminar today. Once again, our thanks to Jürgen for a truly invigorating and substantial exchange. Like a splendid meal, I anticipate that our mindsets will return many times to reappreciate his choice, insights, and continue to ponder and assimilate the strategic advice and path of thought he has marked out for us. Last but not the least, I convey my appreciations to all the distinguished participants and viewers for your active engagement and interaction as evident through the Q&A session and operation of chat forums at its best. Thank you, and I would like to conclude the session with the quote from the 14th Dalai Lama, quote, "The ultimate source of happiness is our mental attitude," unquote. With this, I wish all participants and viewers a happy July month. Kadinche. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Rinchen. Thank you for the feedback. I mean, I can stay 5 or 10 more minutes for anyone who might still have a burning questions, even after the closing. So if anyone wants to have an informal chat, but I'm really deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this wonderful session. Hope to hear some more sessions like this where we can inculcate some better well-being. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. I think that's actually lovely. If people want to say goodbye on video and audio, I think that just makes a very human feeling.
If you want to have an informal, the exchanges, I think you can continue with Jürgen. But officially, the virtual seminar, I think we are closing this. So thank you so much for all the inputs from all the distinguished participants. I think it has been very fruitful and meaningful. So we also look forward to having such